There's a difference between letting go and falling apart. Most of us never learn it. So we hold on until our hands bleed, or we collapse under the weight of what we refuse to release. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet heaviness in your chest when you know something needs to end, but you can't bring yourself to open your hands. Maybe it's a relationship that's become a ghost of what it was. Maybe it's a dream you've outgrown, but still wear like an old coat. Maybe it's just the person you used to be, and you're terrified of what remains when that version of you dissolves. We're taught to be strong, to endure, to hold our ground. But no one teaches us the architecture of release, how to let something go without losing ourselves in the process. So we grip tighter. We tell ourselves that loyalty means suffering, that love means staying, that commitment means never changing our minds. And somewhere in that grip, we forget we're alive. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying what no longer serves you. It's different from the tiredness of hard work or the fatigue of a long day. This exhaustion lies deeper. It settles in your bones. It makes every step feel like you're walking through water, every breath slightly too shallow, every moment of joy tinged with the shadow of what you're dragging behind you. The mind becomes a courtroom. You prosecute yourself daily. If I let go, what does that say about me? Am I weak? Am I a quitter? Did I waste all that time? The questions multiply like cracks in glass, spreading until you can barely see through them. And here's what makes it worse: the world celebrates endurance. We make heroes of those who never gave up, who pushed through, who stayed the course. We write songs about holding on. We quote poems about persistence. We've built entire philosophies around the nobility of suffering. But what about the quiet courage it takes to say, this far and no further? What about the strength required to walk away from something you've poured yourself into, knowing the emptiness that follows? What about the wisdom to recognize when holding on has become self-destruction dressed up as dedication? There's a tree outside my window. Every autumn, it releases thousands of leaves without ceremony, without regret, without wondering if it's making a mistake. The leaves turn gold, then rust, then they fall. The tree doesn't mourn them. It doesn't chase after them in the wind. It doesn't post memories of better days when it was fuller, greener, more itself. It simply lets go. And in that release, it survives the winter. In that emptiness, it prepares for spring. But we are not trees. We are humans, cursed and blessed with memory, with meaning making, with the ability to attach our identity to everything we touch. When we let go of something, it feels like we're letting go of a piece of ourselves. And maybe we are. Maybe that's exactly what growth demands. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chögyam, Dren says we suffer because we cling to a fixed idea of how things should be. We create a mental image of a relationship, a career, a version of ourselves, and then we spend our lives trying to force reality to match the picture. When it doesn't, we suffer. When we can't make it fit, we break. But breaking and letting go are not the same thing. Breaking happens when you've held on past the point of integrity. It's the sudden collapse, the emergency, the crisis that forces your hand. Breaking is loud, it's messy, it leaves shrapnel. Letting go is different. It's deliberate, it's conscious. It's the art of releasing before the structure collapses, before you lose yourself entirely in the attempt to save what cannot be saved. Think of it like this. Imagine you're crossing a river, stepping from stone to stone. To move forward, you must lift your foot from one stone before you can place it on the next. If you try to keep both feet planted, you'll be stuck forever, straddling the gap, muscles straining, balance failing. Letting go is lifting your foot. It's the brief moment of faith between one stone and the next. Most of us spend our lives with one foot on yesterday and one foot reaching toward tomorrow, never fully landing anywhere. Always caught in the tension between what was and what could be. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. But to be drawn toward what you love, you must first release what you don't. You must open the hand that's gripping the past. You must make space. And here's the paradox that stops us. We believe that letting go means we didn't care enough. That if we truly loved something, we would fight for it forever, regardless of the cost. We've romanticized destruction in the name of devotion. But real love for another person, for a dream, for yourself, real love sometimes looks like release. It looks like saying, I love this, and it was beautiful, and now it's time. It looks like honoring what was without demanding it become what it can no longer be. It looks like choosing your own wholeness over the comfort of the familiar. So before we go further, let me ask you something. What are you holding on to right now that's slowly crushing you? What weight are you carrying that you've convinced yourself is noble, when really it's just heavy? Don't answer quickly. Sit with it. Sit with it. Feel where in your body that the weight lies. Because the art of letting go begins with honest recognition. It begins with naming what we've been too afraid to see. We don't attach to things randomly. There's always a reason, always a need being met, always a wound being protected, or a hunger being fed. To let go wisely, we must first understand why we hold on. The ego is a beautiful, terrible thing. It's the part of you that builds a story about who you are, and then defends that story at all costs. It collects evidence. It creates narratives. It says, I am the person who never quits, or I am the one who loves deeply, or I am the one who keeps promises. And once you've declared these things, once you've built your identity around them, letting go feels like suicide. If I'm the person who never quits, then walking away makes me a failure. If I'm the one who loves deeply, then leaving makes me cold. If I'm the one who keeps promises, then changing my mind makes me a liar. So we stay, not because staying serves us, but because leaving would shatter the story we've been telling ourselves about who we are. This is the first architecture of attachment. Identity fusion. When you can no longer distinguish between yourself and the thing you're holding on to, release becomes terrifying because it feels like self-annihilation. But here's the truth the ego doesn't want you to know. You are not your commitments. You are not your relationships. You are not your past decisions. You are the awareness beneath all of that, the consciousness that witnesses the story, but is not imprisoned by it. The second architecture is sunk cost. We've invested so much time, energy, hope, money, tears, years that walking away feels like admitting it was all for nothing. The mind does this cruel math. If I leave now, it means I wasted 5 years. But if I stay another year, maybe it'll all make sense. This is how people spend decades in the wrong place, always believing that just a little more time will justify the time already spent. But there's a fallacy here. The past is gone. It's not coming back. The only question that matters is, does staying serve your future, or are you just trying to make peace with your past? The Vietnamese Zen, Master Thich Nhat Hanh taught about interbeing, the idea that nothing exists independently. Everything is connected, constantly flowing, always changing. When we try to freeze something in place, to make it permanent, to stop the river from flowing, we create suffering. A relationship is not a static thing. It's a living process, constantly evolving. The person you loved 5 years ago is not the same person today. You are not the same person. The relationship itself has transformed. Sometimes honoring what was means accepting what is. And what is might be completion, not failure completion. The third architecture of attachment is fear of the void. We know what we have, even if it hurts. We don't know what comes next. So we choose known, suffering over unknown possibility. This is the fear that whispers, at least you have this. At least you're not alone. At least you have a purpose, even if it's exhausting. What if you let go and there's nothing? What if you're empty? What if you can't fill the space? And this fear is not irrational. The void is real. When you release something that's been central to your life, there is a period of emptiness. There is grief. There is disorientation. There are mornings when you wake up and reach for what's no longer there. But here's what the fear doesn't tell you. The void is not permanent. It's not death. It's the pause between inhale and exhale. It's the silence between notes that makes music possible. It's the empty canvas before the painting. The void is not absence. It's potential. In Japanese aesthetics, there's a concept called ma, the space between things. In music, it's the rest between notes. In art, it's the negative space that defines the form. In life, it's the emptiness that allows for new growth. Without ma, there's only noise. Without release, there's only accumulation. Without letting go, there's no room for what wants to arrive. Alan Watts used to say that we suffer because we try to hold on to a wave in the ocean. We see something beautiful moving through our lives, and we think, this is it. This is the one. I'll hold on to this forever. But the wave, by its very nature, must move. It must rise and fall. It must dissolve back into the ocean. You can stand in the water with your arms outstretched, trying to keep the wave from passing. But all you'll get is tired arms and salt in your mouth. The wave doesn't love you less for moving on. That's just what waves do. The fourth architecture is identity through suffering. This one is subtle, insidious. We become attached to our pain because it makes us feel deep, complex, interesting. We wear our endurance like a badge. We perform our loyalty for an audience, even if the audience is just ourselves. Look how much I can handle, we say. Look how devoted I am. Look how I suffer and still stay. But martyrdom is not love. Crucifixion is not commitment. Bleeding is not proof of anything except that you're bleeding. There's a story from the Desert Fathers, the early Christian mystics who lived in the Egyptian wilderness. A young monk came to an elder and said, "Father, I've been fasting and praying for weeks. I've deprived myself of every comfort. Why do I still not feel holy?" The elder looked at him and said, "Because you're doing it for yourself. You're performing righteousness. But God doesn't need your suffering. God wants your freedom. The same is true for letting go. You don't release something to prove you're strong enough to endure the pain. You release it because you're wise enough to know when something has served its purpose and brave enough to make space for what comes next. So the question becomes, what story are you protecting by holding on? What identity are you defending? What fear are you avoiding? Because until you see the architecture, until you understand why your hand is clenched, you can't consciously choose to open it. Letting go is not a single moment. It's not a switch you flip. It's a practice repeated daily, sometimes hourly, until one day you realize your hand has been open for a while and you didn't even notice. First, you must grieve. This is non-negotiable. You cannot skip to acceptance. You cannot bypass the ache. The path forward runs directly through the pain, not around it. When you let go of something, a person, a dream, a version of yourself, you are experiencing a death. Not a physical death, but a death nonetheless. And all deaths deserve mourning. Grief is not weakness. It's not failure. It's the price of having loved, having tried, having cared. It's what happens when something that mattered dissolves. And if you try to numb it, deny it, rush past it, it will wait for you. It will show up later, in your body, in your next relationship, in your sudden exhaustion, in your inexplicable rage at small things. So feel it. Let yourself be sad. Let yourself be angry. Let yourself feel the loss without immediately trying to fix it, transcend it, or learn from it. Just sit in the rubble for a while. The poet Nayira Wahid writes, "And I said to my body, softly, I want to be your friend." It took a long breath and replied, "I have been waiting my whole life for this." Your body knows how to grieve. Your mind is the one that resists, that wants to understand, that demands explanations. But grief is not intellectual. It's cellular. It's the way your shoulders finally drop. It's the way your chest opens when you cry. It's the way exhaustion pulls you into sleep after weeks of insomnia. Let your body teach you how to let go. Second, you must practice non-attachment without detachment. This is a crucial distinction. Non-attachment means you can love fully without needing to control the outcome. Detachment means you've numbed yourself to protect against pain. Non-attachment says, I care deeply and I release expectations. Detachment says, I won't care because caring hurts. One is wisdom. The other is armor. The Bhagavad Gita teaches this principle. Do your duty, act with love, but release your attachment to the fruits of your actions. This doesn't mean don't care. It means pour yourself into the moment without clutching at the result. When you love someone, love them fully. When you work on a dream, give it everything. But hold it all loosely enough that when it's time to release, you can. Think of it like holding water. If you clench your fist around it, it escapes. If you open your palm, it stays until it's time to evaporate or flow. And that's okay. Third, you must cultivate spaciousness. This is the practice of deliberately creating emptiness in your life so that letting go doesn't feel like losing everything. If your entire identity is wrapped up in one relationship, one job, one role, then releasing it will destroy you. But if you've built a life with multiple sources of meaning, connection, and purpose, then any single loss, while painful, is not catastrophic. This isn't about hedging your bets or loving less. It's about remembering that you are larger than any single part of your life. You are not just a partner, or just an employee, or just a parent. You are a multiplicity, vast, complex, ever-changing. Tend to multiple gardens. Cultivate friendships. Nurture your creativity. Spend time alone. Build a relationship with silence. Learn to enjoy your own company. Because when you know you can be whole on your own, letting go becomes a choice rather than a collapse. Fourth, practice the pause. Between the urge to hold on and the act of gripping tighter, there's a tiny space. Between the fear of loss and the impulse to cling, there's a breath. In that space, you have freedom. The Stoics called this the dichotomy of control. There are things you can control: your thoughts, your actions, your responses. And there are things you cannot control: other people, outcomes, the past, the future. Suffering happens when we try to control what we cannot. Peace happens when we release what was never ours to hold. So when you feel the grip tightening, when you feel yourself spiraling into control, into fear, into desperation, pause, just for a breath, and ask, what am I actually afraid of right now? Usually, it's not the thing itself. It's a deeper fear. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of being forgotten. I'm afraid I wasted my time. I'm afraid I'll never find this again. I'm afraid of my own emptiness. Name the fear. Don't fight it. Just see it clearly. Because once you name it, It loses some of its power. Once you see it, you realize, oh, this is fear. This is not truth. This is not a command. It's just fear doing what fear does. And then, just maybe, you can choose differently. Fifth, ritualize the release. Humans need rituals. We need markers, ceremonies, intentional moments that tell our nervous system, this chapter is ending. We are moving forward. Write a letter you don't send. Burn something symbolic. Plant something new. Create art from the ache. Speak words of gratitude and goodbye to an empty room. It doesn't matter if it feels silly. It doesn't matter if no one else understands. The ritual is not for them. It's for you. It's the way you tell your body and your heart, we're ready now. We're letting go. And finally, trust the timing. Not everything can be released the moment you recognize it needs to go. Sometimes you need to build strength first. Sometimes you need to gather resources. Sometimes you're just not ready yet, and that's okay. There's no award for speed. There's no prize for letting go before you're able to do it without shattering. The art of letting go is also the art of knowing when. So be patient with yourself. Be gentle. You're learning to do one of the hardest things a human can do. To love something and release it at the same time. Here's what they don't tell you about letting go. You don't become lighter immediately. First, you become untethered. First, you float without direction. First, you feel more lost than you did when you were carrying the weight. Because at least the weight was familiar. At least it gave you a purpose, even if that purpose was just survival. At least struggling against it made you feel alive. But then something happens. Slowly, so slowly you almost don't notice. The space that felt like absence begins to feel like freedom. The void that terrified you becomes a place of rest. The silence that screamed with ghosts becomes just silence, peaceful, open, possible. You wake up one morning and realize you haven't thought about it in hours, then days. Then you do think about it, and it doesn't gut you anymore. There's tenderness there, maybe some wistfulness, but not the consuming ache that used to define your mornings. This is what remains when you learn to let go without breaking yourself. Not the old self, clinging and desperate. Not the broken self, shattered by loss, but a self that's been refined by release, strengthened by surrender, expanded by empty space. You discover that you're still here. That was always the fear, wasn't it? That if you let go, you would disappear. That you were nothing without that relationship, that dream, that identity. But you're still here. Maybe tender, maybe uncertain about what comes next. But here, present, breathing, whole in your wholeness, complete in your incompleteness. The Japanese art of kintsugi teaches us something profound. When a bowl breaks, they don't throw it away or pretend it was never broken. They mend it with gold, highlighting the cracks rather than hiding them. The bowl becomes more valuable, more beautiful, more itself because it was broken and repaired. You are that bowl. Everything you've released, every ending you've survived, every attachment you've overcome, those aren't flaws. They're golden seams. They're proof that you know how to break and keep going. That you know how to let go and remain. There's a particular kind of wisdom that only comes from release. It's the wisdom of impermanence, of change, of the flowing nature of all things. Before you let go of something you desperately wanted to keep, you might intellectually understand that nothing lasts forever. But after you've lived through the dissolution and discovered you survived, you know it in your bones, and that knowing changes everything. You love differently. Not less, but better. You love with your hands open. You love without the crushing need to possess, to freeze, to make permanent. You love the way you might love a sunset fully, completely, with your whole heart, knowing it will end, and that the ending doesn't diminish the beauty. You dream differently. You still want things, still work toward goals, still create and build. But there's less desperation in it, less of your identity wrapped up in the outcome. You can pour yourself into something and also hold space for the possibility that it might not work out, and you'll be okay either way. You live differently. You're more present, less haunted by what was or what could be. You're here, now, in this moment, which is the only moment that's real anyway. The spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle says that all suffering comes from being out of alignment with the present moment, trapped in past regret or future anxiety. When you learn to let go, you learn to live here. Not perfectly, not constantly, but more and more you find yourself landing in now. And here's the most surprising thing. Sometimes, after you let go, the thing you release transforms. Sometimes it comes back in a different form. Sometimes the relationship that had to end makes space for a new kind of connection. Sometimes the dream that died makes space for a better dream. Sometimes the identity you released reveals a truer self underneath. But sometimes it doesn't come back. Sometimes it's just gone, and that's the lesson. That's the growth. That you can lose something precious and keep living. That you can survive the unsurvivable. That you're bigger than your losses. There's a Zen saying, let go or be dragged. You've been dragged. You know what that feels like? The exhaustion, the bruises, the way everything hurts when you resist what's already in motion. Now you're learning the other way, the conscious way, the way that says, I see you change. I see you ending. I see you loss. I don't like you, but I'm not going to let you destroy me in the struggle. You're learning to let go without breaking. Not because you're hard, but because you're flexible. Not because you don't care, but because you care enough about yourself to know when holding on has become self-destruction. And there will be more endings, more releases, more moments when you'll have to choose between clutching and opening. Because that's what it means to be alive, to constantly encounter impermanence and choose again and again how to meet it. But now you know. You know that you can survive it. You know that letting go doesn't erase what was or mean it didn't matter. You know that you can love something and release it. You know that endings make space for beginnings. You know that you are not what you hold. You are what remains when everything else falls away, and what remains is enough. What remains is you tender, scarred, wiser, freer, more yourself than ever before. So here's my invitation. Look at what you're holding. Really look at it. Feel its weight. And ask yourself, not from fear, not from obligation, but from deep self-love, is this still serving me? Or am I serving it? Is this relationship, this commitment, this identity still alive? Or am I carrying its ghost? You don't have to decide right now. You don't have to do anything at all. Just consider the question. Just sit with the possibility that maybe, opening your hand doesn't mean you're weak. Maybe it means you're finally strong enough to trust yourself. The art of letting go without breaking is really the art of trusting yourself to land. It's knowing that you've fallen before and survived. It's believing that whatever comes next, you'll figure it out. And you will. You always do. Because you're still here, aren't you? Still breathing, still trying, still learning to hold life lightly enough that when it's time to release you can. That's not fragility. That's wisdom, that's the art.